In this episode of Unscripted with SST, we're breaking down the most important takeaways from 2025 and the trends we see going into 2026. No buzzwords, just practical insights based on what we're seeing with real businesses every day. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with SST, the LinkedIn live show where we deep dive into the real, unfiltered world of IT, cybersecurity, and business technology. Brought to you by SST, we are here to cut through the noise, share expert insights, and tackle the challenges shaping the future of managed IT services. Live, raw, and unscripted. Joining me today for our last episode of 2025 is part of the SST team, Bo, Josh, and Ryan, to close out the year. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello, good to be here.
So today, just from a high level, what we're going to tackle is, like we said at the onset here, we're going to hit on some 2025 takeaways, some things that we saw within the industry, our client base, us being a relatively new business still, and then some 26 trends. So we'll kind of jump right into it, I guess. The first kind of like takeaway we want to lean into here is really the essence of our business and how we deliver our services, and that's proactive work versus reactive work. Josh, you want to kick us off in this discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that's become, I would say, the core of how we're trying to deliver services here now. And my job role specifically, I would say I kind of prioritize and specialize in the proactive side of things. And to put simply, we're just trying to do more root cause analysis, more proactive work to eliminate that reactive stuff. And all of my job experience before this, growing up on a service desk, learning everything that I've known about IT up to that point, all of my responsibilities in the past have been completely reactive in a sense. And that was a big mental shift to start, along with the job role change of just starting to frame how I'm looking at IT in different environments and trying to think, how can we eliminate the noise, reduce the noise here, try to bring the numbers of those reactive tickets down.
Yeah, so what are some of those things, like when we talk about this, like the proactive, what are some of the things that you're doing that you would consider proactive?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a few months, I would say, coming up with a set of standards and what we think a normal IT environment should look like. And when we get into a new environment, it really starts for me is getting a baseline of where an environment is sitting in a sense of anything related to their IT. And we can start to compare what we're finding in that first month or two to our set of standards, and then slowly working systematically from there, just putting those proactive things in place and getting them up to speed with where we think an environment should be at. And I would definitely say in the environments that we worked in over the past year, we've noticed a considerable difference in the more proactive work we're trying to do, less tickets we have coming in a reactive sense, which is the goal, the whole goal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also think like we talk about this, being the foundation of our existence, right? Like when we're talking to clients, and I think this dialogue has been for a while. Like if you're really going to be have a cybersecurity focus, it needs to be part of your culture, right? And I'd say this proactive thought process similarly needs to be part of your culture. I mean, would you agree with that?
I would say so, absolutely. And especially in every portion of an IT environment you need to be proactive in, but moving forward nowadays, I would put cybersecurity above almost everything else, making sure that you're protected and you have the right tools and things in place. There's so much out there nowadays that can just put companies at risk. And going back to that root cause analysis of figuring out exactly, starting with an inventory, understanding exactly what you have in your environment, that also is telling you what you need to be protecting in your environment. And just starting to build in some of those cybersecurity controls goes a long way right off the bat.
So Josh, like you're not only inventorying hardware and the age of hardware and things like that, like cybersecurity metrics are also things that you're doing in your standards, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're inventorying hardware, all of your hardware, not just your workstations. It includes your network equipment, everything along with that, all of the software that you're using. And that was a new one for us. I would say we started to realize how much software is actually in an environment when you start to poke around, and you can get lost in the weeds really quickly. We really decided to start focusing on what software is business critical. Do clients know what software of theirs is completely business critical? What are things that require a yearly license? Are they tracking when those renewals and things are up? That's all stuff that we found to be lacking in some environments, and it's something really easy that you can go. You just have to put the time in to inventory and go and do that. But once you have an understanding and you have it marked down somewhere, it's really easy to keep track of.
Well, and it's back to like you said, it's a very easy thing that just takes discipline. But how can you protect what you don't know you have from a hardware perspective, and even maybe more importantly, a software perspective, especially as AI, is in every piece of software these days.
That's a good question, and especially with AI, and I feel like we'll talk about more of that in a bit too. But it's as I mentioned before, it's once you actually start going in and starting to grab an inventory, you start to see how much you actually have in your environment, and it can be really overwhelming. A good thing from our perspective, or the perspective of an MSP coming in, is you get a fresh set of eyes in an environment, and you get to compare everything that we're seeing as this third party coming in, and we can sit down with stakeholders and be like, okay, what do you think you have? What do you deem important? And compare that to what we're coming in and seeing. And you can actually start to get a more of a true list to work off of after that's done.
Mm-hmm. I mean, some of that kind of leads into, a point I wanted to make was really, we've really, like, our foundation of our service delivery is really based on like the standardization, both of our processes and the framework and operations that we deliver, right? So like we heavily lean into the CIS cybersecurity framework, for those best practices of what you need to see in an environment. Then it's easy to assess, are we doing the right things or not? It's pretty a nice, clear framework. Our other operations, right? We've identified from our service delivery perspective, like what it is, the roles that we need to do, the reoccurring things that we need to do, how we check, and do that proactive work, like what that consists of, what our standards are, and really like bringing that to our customers. Because a lot of times, like you mentioned, like, you kind of get in there and there's all these nuances with customer. They all think like their IT is so much different, and how they use IT is it's so different than the next company, and that's the only way to use it. And what you find is like, really at the core, a lot of that technology and kind of the platforms that they're using, they're not that unique. And so there's certain things that you need to do across the whole, like to make sure that is a healthy, stable, secure environment for these companies that they can run their business on top of. Certainly there's nuances with how they operate specifically, but a lot of that technology, it's shared, and it's not that crazy. But having those standards and knowing like this is all the things that need to be in place, and having those proactive processes to go through and look at that periodically to make sure it's still in place. Like, this configuration SKU is a real deal, especially like with cloud and all the infrastructure, things change over time. So making sure, yes, it's back to where it needs to be, or as the configuration should change, that you're looking at and making sure you have the necessary change so customers don't have those processes. But it does take a lot of time, and that's kind of where we started this business, was just figuring out those processes, those standards, like how are we going to operate? I mean, it's been quite a journey. We're 14 months into this kind of this business that we're running, and kind of where we've gotten here is really that focus more on the, kind of how we are going to run and the processes needed that really allow us to deliver what we need to for our customers. I mean, that's been a huge thing for us, kind of looking back at the kind of the year in reverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would just say that if you really look into this deep, how can we deliver the most value to our customers, right? And that's the exercise that we took on here, right? And like that standards and the proactive work, all of that being the foundation, has really allowed us to be, to deliver really, super valuable services to our clients. I was going to ask you one thing quick, Bo. what's the most common inconsistency you're seeing in environments? And maybe the question is, after we've taken a client on, what is the most difficult thing to get in line and standardize?
I mean, I don't know, Josh, if you have any thoughts, you do more of the kind of the alignment and standards review there. I'm kind of taking the data that Josh is finding, helping to kind of put together plans to rectify it. But I don't know. I mean, I guess nothing. I don't know if there's kind of one consistent thing. I think we find multiple things at every customer, right? Nobody's perfect. And it's a journey to get kind of to where we need to go. And I think kind of understanding that, of knowing where you want to go with those standards and processes, allows us to put that customer on a path to be able to remedy that stuff. So it's not just like everybody has this. I think everybody's got a few things that need to be addressed, and it all comes with time and money and making sure that, it's addressed at the right time for our customers. I don't know, Josh, anything to add?
There have been a few things that I would say are relatively consistent between client environments. I mean, the one that I've already mentioned is definitely that inventory. That's what we really start to tackle right off the bat in any new environment. And it's not necessarily fun. Like, I don't know if anyone particularly enjoys it, but it's time consuming. You're trying to go through and review absolutely everything you have, which, if you have a pretty big environment, means you have a lot of stuff. So that's something that definitely takes a lot of time, but as we've already talked about today, like, is extremely important. And that's why we tackle it first in any new environment. The next thing coming off of that, I would say pretty consistently, is and relating back to security, is specifically cloud security comes to mind. I've found that the baselines and standards that we've come up with for that, and we're trying to implement environments, a lot of new environments that we get into are lacking some of those controls. And Ryan, you go through a lot of implementing those. When we do that, I feel like you would maybe agree with me on a lot of these new environments.
Yeah, I would. For cloud environments, there's 26 controls that we monitor, and I'd say on average, when we're walking into an environment, there's maybe 5 to 10 that are in place. And there's some really important ones that we set up that usually are not in place, at least up to our standards. And that's something that, like, as part of onboarding we do, and I think it's a big win off the bat, because cloud security is so important. Like, email compromise is like one of the most common attacks out there, and we're finding that what people have in place, like, they think they're safe, but you really have to tune those policies and keep them at the levels they need to be at in order to have the spam and filtering and all this other protection that you need.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, the cloud, how those platforms are set up, it's for ease of use. It's to get somebody in there where it's friendly for them. They can start to consume and leverage that for their business, but doesn't necessarily have the security mechanism in there to protect themselves. So that's where it's kind of that combination of the workflow and the security. You got to have some of that in place. And oftentimes it's kind of, you start looking at it and you're like, yeah, nobody ever looked at that. They just started figuring out the workflow part and never considered any of the security ramifications associated with it.
And with that, even us internally, as far as like considering security ramifications with like tools and processes, like from the get-go, that was number one. Is we found our framework that we wanted to implement, and then broke it down into processes that we knew we were going to have to do, and a lot of those are handled by Josh. The checks that we have to keep doing, or at least do to start, and then from there, what wasn't handled by process, that's where, like, how we chose our tools. A lot of them is which boxes can they check, and it's not just checking a box. It's a real cybersecurity framework. It's an item that's important, and we wanted to have our tool stack align with that too. So starting from the baseline, we're at that framework, and we've built everything on top of that.
So I just want to make this like super tangible for people that might be listening. When we talk about a lot of this cloud security related things, one of the elements that we do during onboarding is the hardening of that Microsoft environment, right?
Yep. And our tools integrate with those cloud environments. So even with the extra protections that we put in place off the bat, like, our tools also are monitoring those. And that's why we selected the tools we did too. is for those capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of how important those systems are to any business. Almost every business uses a cloud email application.
So around the tool stack, Ryan, is there one particular tool or a process in place that you were able to implement because of the tools that you have seen reduce or like reduce difficulties or improve the efficiencies of your role that is having a benefit for the client?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. I would say our RMM tool really enables me more than one I'd used previously to really keep things consistent in client environments. It allows me to set monitors for certain conditions like disk being full or like memory being high, and automatically resolve some of those issues. And so that reduces noise for us, but as well as that, like if the issue isn't automatically resolved, it isn't just ignored. We're also alerted about that. And you could say it's reactive, but it's more proactive because we are reaching out to clients before they even know that there's a potential issue that could be coming up and resolving that for them. And I think that like having that powerful tool at my disposal to kind of set up those solutions has really helped.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good point too, is like it's using those tools to automatically fix those issues rather than just create a ticket for some manual process to happen, which takes time and effort and could delay the response to the customer. So yeah, I think that's an important note with that as well.
Would one other difference, Ryan, you would say with tools, especially the tools we're using, is that nowadays compared to how things used to be, is you used to go and have to use group policy management for things on-prem and domains, and then you'd have to use another tool for this specific thing just for workstations and patching, and then you'd have to go and use this other tool for cloud security and use this other tool for identity management. There are tools that you can use, and I'd like to think we're using them in place nowadays where you can actually cover all your bases just from that one tool stack.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've definitely minimized, like gotten to as close to single pane of glass for those types of situations, especially with like identity management and security. Those are kind of one big interface that we're able to see like at a very quick glance, security of not only endpoints, but also cloud identities, any alerts with that, and also like multi-factor status, and just everything is, I would say, as centralized as possible, and that does help.
Yeah, good. So we're kind of getting down. We got 10 minutes left in our show here. We still want to hit on the 2026 trends that we see. Some of the things from our perspective. But I did want to just briefly touch on looking back. I think that your traditional like ransomware kind of scenarios that are fallout from cyber events, like that's always been a concern, and that's not going away. The threat landscape increasing because of we're more and more connected, and now the more and more connected devices are of even greater exposure because of AI, right? Like what was the one stat? I can't remember where I got it from, but the increase in credential phishing has gone up 703% in 2025 because of AI, right? But the one kind of cyber risk that's out there that is becoming more and more of a real thing is this reputational risk of your brand, your company, your image, and what are you doing to try to protect it? Because if more and more things are requiring like alignment to security standards, maybe different industries have more compliance requirements. So having this having reputational risk in front of mind and making sure that you're doing things intentfully to also protect that is super important, and it's going to just continually be that. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that. So just kind of moving along, then we have, like I said, 10 minutes left here. If we start talking about some of the trends that we see that are going to be relevant for 26, Bo, you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I guess the first thing when we look ahead, there is kind of like we talked about our standardization on framework and processes, and really, I think looking ahead, it's just being mindful of how we're being efficient and allowing to scale and still support our customers. I think that's something I think will benefit our customers long term because we're mindful. Obviously, we're a new company and we have growth plans, but we want to do that in a scalable, efficient way that's still delivering that value for our customers. Where certainly it's easy to support customers as we're starting to grow and don't have as much, but what happens when we start to add enough customers and we're hitting those levels where we need to be, right? As we continue to add customers and continue to provide that value, where we're able to deliver that same consistent service. So, that's something, just mindful off the top of our heads, like, that every day we're looking at how we're delivering those services, what it is that those frameworks are saying we need to do, how our processes support that, and we're still doing the right things and continue to scale this and deliver those services. It's just
So on that, right? I mean, we talked about some of the foundational things that we've done around being proactive, having standards, being process driven, disciplined. I mean, how does all of that help us deliver the same experience in a time when we're scaling up?
I mean, it allows us to be mindful of how we're delivering because we know what we plan to deliver and how long that takes for our customers, if that makes sense. Like there's no surprises. We know what we do on a weekly basis, from our tools upkeep, from our our check-ins, from the technical alignment, how often we need to be meeting and looking at the strategy with our customers. So we know what those things are. We can project capacity and make sure the process to do that task is still getting the job done, and we can do what we need to do for our customers. Like knowing how we deliver that stuff, I think really enables us to look strategically at how we're delivering that service, because IT changes all the time. There's going to be different tools, there's different needs, those frameworks are going to update, there's best practices that change. So knowing, hey, we looked at this, here's a different way to do it, that was going to allow us to scale and support and still to manage and deliver the services for our customers that we need to be delivering.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, without the defined process, you wouldn't really know where you're at. Like, you don't have a baseline to compare your performance against if you're just winging it.
Yeah, and one of the other things along with that I would like to think we've done well, or in any organization that's trying to build a set of standards, and then you eventually get to the point of, okay, like we have this built, is it going to scale? How do you go about assessing your own standards, and like, how do we know if they're going to scale or not? And I feel like that just comes with consistent routine process review, where we're cutting out time on a monthly basis or whatever it is, and we're all sitting down and going, okay, here are our processes, we've used them for this period of time, what worked and what didn't work, how do we think that's going to change moving forward?
Well, and honestly, just that, like reviewing your processes, like it takes practice, right? Like you need to self-reflect, you need to pause, like you said, take the time. But just by, like, I think a lot of companies or other MSPs, they may like struggle with some of that and not know where to start. But don't you think you just got to start somewhere, right? Start where you're at.
Just do something. Like just start and do something for a period of time, and then get back together as a group, review how did it go, what went well, what didn't work, what can we try different, and you just keep doing that over and over again, maybe forever. I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think forever. Yeah,
we've certainly done a lot of that this year. Started somewhere, refined it.
Well, then when you have to think about the future and different trends and new things, especially in the IT world that are being introduced, you get, right now, everything just ties back to AI and how that's going to start influencing the workplace. I mean, during on-site visits with clients, I've had stakeholders and end users asking about, hey, like, can I start using Copilot, or how can we use this in the business? And it's like, I'm not even 100% sure all the time. Like, ties all the way back to one of the first things we talked about, which was inventory. And it's like, hey, we need to start going through and actually inventory what potential AI tools or what software do you have in your environment that integrates with AI. We need to just figure that out first, and then we can start taking baby steps up from there. Because one of the worst things you can probably do is just jump in the deep end and give some of these AI tools access to all your data without knowing what you're doing. It's kind of like a power tool, like you're just going to hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that. Like, so that's a classic. It's a real example of we don't necessarily know what the best way to enable our clients to leverage AI, but it's going to be unique for each one of them. If we start at the base level and collect all the information across their applications and what they have for AI capabilities and how we would secure them, now we can start to create some kind of strategy on what, how they're going to leverage AI to best make their, most efficient use within their business, right? If we never started there, we're like, you're going to end up with the wrong solution.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that.
I think the other key part with that too is making sure you understand the business operations. It's not just the technology; it's understanding, what they're delivering to their customers and how they're like internally deliver that product. Whether it's a service, it's a machine itself, it's a component to a machine, but understanding that workflow too and how they operate internally from the back office to production. If you understand, how that works and you understand the technology capabilities, now you can help be that trusted provider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so in the essence of time, thanks for that, Bo. In the essence of time here, I think one more kind of like trend, and this is not a shocker, but is going to be cybersecurity related. Does anybody have anything they'd like to expand upon with regards to cybersecurity in 26?
I mean, it's not going away, right? The cybersecurity, the risks and the threats that are out there are only growing in complexity, partly because of, AI is certainly enabling a lot of different threats out there. A lot of the requirements just within industries, we're seeing more stringent requirements from, just operational within industries and in the, cybersecurity insurance, which is necessary across the board. We're seeing additional requirements there requiring, reasonable cybersecurity, whatever that means, right? As far as like the tools and operations to make sure you're doing the right things. If that demand is going to keep going, right? The threats are evolving, the protections are going to need to evolve as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have maybe a little like 2 minutes left here. So we kind of wanted to end with all of us sharing New Year's resolutions, both personal and professionally. So I think we got time to do that. Josh, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big golfer personally. I would say, as far as personal goals, I'm trying to shoot par. I've never shot par in my life. Along with that, just trying to get the handicap below a 2. Always chasing scratch. Always trying to get there. Maybe we'll one day. We'll see. Professionally, I would say I'm very excited. I'm going to be getting on a plane for the first time in my life. That's more partially personal and professional, but that'll be happening in February. So Ryan will get to experience Josh on a plane for the first time. It'll be a good time. And then there is the CISSP certification, cybersecurity certification. I'm really going to be looking to add that one to my list over the next year.
Awesome. Thank you. Bo, how about you?
Yeah, mine are kind of centered around golf. I was kind of joking in the back around just continuing to beat Josh or be competitive with Josh as far as golf goes. But in all seriousness, I would like, I've had a goal the last couple of years of shooting, 2 under par at Forest Hills here. That's my home golf course. So I would say that's kind of the thing I probably lean towards from a personal goal. I'm going to have to do a lot more practicing in order to enable that, but that's certainly a goal of mine. And then from a professional goal would be more kind of from the organization. One of the things we're looking at is the GTIA Cybersecurity Trust Mark certification. So, with a lot of the things that we put in place as far as our process and automation, that's going to be a big journey that we're taking on, and I'm going to help hopefully lead the company into getting that accreditation or certification. So that's kind of what 2026 looks like for me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Bo. And Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, my personal goal is to keep learning music, and part of that is like I fall into the habit of just learning chunks of songs on guitar. And so my resolution this year is to learn a full song every month on guitar that I can play front to back.
Maybe
And
we could play. Maybe you could play it on Unscripted once.
possibly, maybe even a Christmas song. Well, it's the last one of the year. I don't think there's Easter music, but professionally, as we move forward into next year, kind of with the cybersecurity in mind, we're really leaning into zero trust. And part of that is a tool that we use called Threat Locker, and I would like to get the Threat Locker's cyber hero certification.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. So for me personally, I think I just need to make sure that I'm, have self-awareness so that I can really appreciate the journey, whatever it is, and not, trying to fast forward to the end. Being disciplined day in and day out and appreciating that is my focus personally for 26. And then professionally, I want to ensure that we're executing so that we can achieve our 26 business plans and those goals. So that's what my main focus is for 26. So again, really appreciate you guys for everything you've done the entire year, and thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for anybody that's ever listened to even a second of Unscripted with SST. We hope to have several more episodes out there throughout 26 and keep this thing going strong. So looking ahead, preparation and clarity matter more than ever in 26. Thanks for joining us on Unscripted with SST, and we'll see you next year.